governance level, citizen engagement, not just at the project level, but actually at the governance level. They engaged 30,000 citizens over about a year using online technology and offline meetings like this to find out what did citizens of Vancouver really want for their future. And they collectively came to this vision of the greenest city by 2020. They wanted to be the greenest city in the world. They identified 10 key areas like green economy and mobility and all these places. And then they actually developed their baseline and started building a strategy with their targets for the future. This is a cool project in Amsterdam called the AMS Institute. It's a collaboration, a co-creation project between the city of Amsterdam, 4 or 5 universities in the Netherlands, several multinational companies, and local citizens participating in master's programs at this new institute, AMS Institute, and they have 4 or 5 urban sustainability challenges like energy, buildings, water, food systems, and they said, all right, we're going to co-create together solutions using our city as a living laboratory to test new innovations to solve our own local urban problems, and then if those solutions work, we will incubate them into startup companies and actually help them get access to other parts of our city, and then next, they'll get access to other parts of other cities. Citizen co-creation. All of this thinking around the evolution of cities and smart cities towards a more co-creative with a growing role of entrepreneurs in the city led me to create this, publish my last book in 2016 called The Emergence of the Urban Entrepreneur, which with Richard Florida as the writing the foreword of the book, and my colleague Pablo Munoz helped me out with the book. In there is identified 3 converging factors that are driving entrepreneurship into cities. The first is urbanization itself. This is nothing new to anyone here. And it's not just about the data we all know about the growing number of people around the world that are living in cities, but what happens beyond that? So as cities grow in population, they have a growing amount of dependence or an expectation to deliver food, energy, water, jobs, buildings, cultural activities. The question then is, how can cities meet this growing demand on infrastructure and resources with the growing population? And that's where a type of urban entrepreneur comes in I call a civic entrepreneur, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But then there's the democratization. All of you in this room are probably quite familiar with this. The idea that over time, tools of innovation technology are becoming democratized. So there's a quote in this book from a venture capital investor in Silicon Valley who says, in the 1990s, it took $2.5 million to bring a tech startup company to market. You had to write your own software, you had to have your own servers, you had to have the space to house and cool these servers. And then he said, you know what I realized? In the 2000s, it's gone from $2.5 million to $250,000 is what it costs to bring a tech product to market, because now we have software as a service, we have servers in the cloud, it's bringing the cost down. And they said what it's starting to look like now is that it's more like $250 to bring a tech product to market. Now, I know there's some tech entrepreneurs in this audience, and they're thinking, $250, I wish. But, you know, there's a lot of really cool examples of very successful projects that have, for example, used crowdfunding, I'll come back to in a minute, that didn't even raise venture capital financing and have had a lot of success on their own. And we have, in cities, we have all this cool, soft infrastructure that supports being an entrepreneur in a city. We have co-working spaces. We have fab labs. I don't know if any of you worked in a fab lab with 3D printers that are accessible to the community, to entrepreneurs, to prototype new ideas. We have meetups. There's probably, I don't know, 100 official meetups in Kuala Lumpur this week, if I go to the meetup website. Everything from blockchain to artistic things people want to meet about with their community. And all these things actually facilitate sharing of knowledge and access to resources that allow you to become an innovator with less money. And then the last one is collaborative, of course, which is two things. A growing collaboration between the city and entrepreneurs and tech companies and the civil society, but also the collaborative economy, which I'll come back to as well. It's been a big driving factor in entrepreneurship and innovation in cities. This led me and my colleague to actually identify 3 types of urban civic entrepreneurs. We have at the bottom here, we have the neighborhood scale civic entrepreneur. This is somebody that's just trying to solve a very local neighborhood problem with entrepreneurial approaches. We have a city level entrepreneur, which is somebody trying to solve a problem at the urban scale of one city. And then we have these multi-city entrepreneurs who are trying to solve urban problems, but across the world or across a region. A couple examples. So Majora Carter, some of you may know, a very famous woman, neighborhood-based entrepreneurial project. She grew up in a poor neighborhood in New York City, in the Bronx. And she was frustrated that so many of the negative environmental projects that happen in her city happen in her neighborhood. They were a very minority neighborhood, mostly black, low-income community, and they were always the recipients of the landfills, the waste dumps, the chemical plants, because no one cared about them enough. And so she started this organization specifically to try to fight for cleaning up her neighborhood. And then she started focusing on things like green skills so that the low-income residents would learn how to do things like implement PV panels for solar heating in homes to try to transform her neighborhood and fight against the negative impacts of the environment that were happening in her neighborhood. So that's a neighborhood-scale civic entrepreneur. Now, not all my civic entrepreneurs are actually private sector entrepreneurs. Nigel Jacob actually came from the private sector. He worked with the former mayor of Boston to launch this office called the New Urban Mechanics. What does it do? This is another real good example of Smart Cities 3.0. New Urban Mechanics in Boston said, you know what? It's impossible for us to always know what the problems are in our city that need to be solved and how entrepreneurs can help us. So why don't we create an office where if a local resident in one neighborhood is frustrated by something in their neighborhood and they think they have a solution for it, they can bring us the idea to our office. If we like the idea, we actually will help incubate it on our city, test it in their neighborhood. If it works, we'll help them scale it to other parts of the city. So this is, again, a way of rethinking what the role of the city is. The city no longer is the solution provider for all the things users need, but instead it becomes an enabler for innovators, entrepreneurs, and residents to actually help solve problems together. This is an example. Sasha Hasemeyer, he's based in Barcelona. Their company is Copenhagen and Barcelona-based. Very cool project. In fact, for any of you that are tech entrepreneurs trying to target smart cities, you should definitely check out their company called CityMart. CityMart does these cool programs which connects the two-sided market. It connects thousands of tech entrepreneurs with thousands of cities around the world that are looking for specific solutions. So, for example, they do these challenges where they help a city. Barcelona, I think, was the first city to do it, it was called BCN Open Challenge. They had 6 challenges, a predetermined budget for each challenge, and they posted the challenge on the CityMart website, and entrepreneurs from around the world who thought they had a solution to that problem would pose their solution. And they actually, the city of Barcelona at least, used this platform, CityMart, in a blind way. So they got all these responses for all the best ways to solve their particular challenge, and the city didn't actually know who the provider of the solution was. They just looked at all the solutions. They chose the best one. Didn't matter what city they came from, or whether they were a big company or a small one. It was how innovative is the idea itself. Another example, Jace Wilson, I got to talk to a few times. He founded this project called Neighborly, which connects bondholders, people who who are investors in large projects, with cities who have infrastructure projects they need help with. So it's kind of like it's like a crowdfunding platform, but connecting cities, again, a two-sided market, connecting cities with institutional investors for large-scale projects around the world, mostly in the US. So this was sort of my last book and my last thinking around how entrepreneurs are contributing to the Smart Cities 3.0 vision. And then I started reading all these books. Sophie just mentioned Harari, who wrote the book Homo Deus. And I read a bunch of these other ones, many of which I'd highly recommend you read as well if you're interested in this space. All these books started helping raise some uncertainty for me and some nervousness around where are we going as an economy and what will be the role of entrepreneurs in the future. And this slide from McAfee from MIT, from one of the books I read, was really powerful for me. I don't know how many of you may have seen this slide, but it's pretty potent. What it shows that since the 1940s, there was almost a perfect correlation between increasing labor productivity and our quality of life globally. We had, as we became more productive with our labor force through technology, we also reaped more of the benefits. So we had more income, more jobs. But what happened between 1980s and 2000 and is actually getting worse now is we saw that it split off. Family income, employment is increasing or even stabilizing while labor productivity is going this way. In fact, many people, I have to sit the way you are, many people are saying with AI and other technology that labor productivity is going to go like that. It's basically going to be infinitely productive, but we all know we're not going to have an infinite amount of jobs. So something's going to happen. And so I'm looking at this and saying, what's happening with our society and where are we going and what is the role of entrepreneurship in this society? And this led me to my next book, which is driven by this vision. Towards a new, local, but globally interconnected, digital, collaborative, urban, economic model of shared prosperity. It's a lot of words in that, and I'll explain how I think we might get there. This is my book, just came out. I'm going to give one away free to somebody who asks an interesting question after the chat. You see on here I have a continuum. So I have a PhD in entrepreneurship. I've been teaching entrepreneurship at universities around the world, business schools, like I do now. But I've been increasingly concerned about where our market economy is going and that it's not creating an inclusive society. We have more inequality around the world than we ever have. I don't know if any of you saw the data from Oxfam. They've been, since 2013, they've been doing research on aggregate wealth in society, comparing the lowest 50% of the world to the most wealthy. In 2013, it was something like the 330 richest people in the world had the same aggregate wealth as the lowest 50% of the planet. I mean 3.7 billion people about. So 330 people have the same wealth as 3.7 billion. That was 2013. Every year it's gotten worse. This most recent study, the 8 wealthiest people on the planet have the same wealth as 3.7 billion people in the world. So something's not working with our economy. So these are alternatives to thinking about entrepreneurship in a traditional market way. So we've got for benefit companies, which are really kind of market-based enterprises, B Corps. I don't know if there are any B Corps in Malaysia yet. B Corp is a specific designation where a company says they're a for-profit company, but they say we are committed to having real societal impacts So we're going to actually measure our social and environmental impact equally with our profit. And there's like over 2,000 companies in the world now. There's a few publicly traded companies that are B Corps. Kickstarter is a B Corp, by the way. So that I consider as like a transitionary solution to some other type of entrepreneurship I'm already observing in the world. Then we have platform cooperatives. Platform cooperatives use the same technology as an intermediary platform. So they're connecting two-sided markets, but instead of being owned by a venture capital-backed company in Silicon Valley, they're actually owned by the users and value creators. I'm going to show you some really interesting examples of that. Then we have peer production and consumption, which goes to another level. It says rather than just share access to existing resources through a platform co-op, we can co-create stuff ourselves and share it within our community in different ways. I'm going to give you examples of all these. And some of you who are already, I know there's been a lot of talk at this conference about blockchain. So a lot of the work in the book, too, talks about blockchain technology as a potentially disruptive and distributed equalizer for alternative forms of entrepreneurship that actually could create more inclusive economies. And, of course, distributed autonomous organizations, a DAO. The idea behind a DAO is that using blockchain technology, you could actually have companies with no company. You could have Uber without Uber. You could have, I'll give you like an advanced example of where this is going that ties back into Sophie's talk about AI. I've been working with a venture capitalist in blockchain out of the UK who's investing in a project that envisions in the near future we could have autonomous vehicles in a car sharing fleet. So some of you probably are familiar with car sharing, where you have cars parked in certain parts of a city and you pay a membership fee and you can use a car when you want, so you're paying for access to a car instead of owning the car. What if you had a DAO that ran a car share service for autonomous vehicles? The vehicle goes around picking up people and they take them where they want to go. And this autonomous vehicle at some point could actually be generating income from all the passenger rides it gets. And at some point it could say, I've got so much money and so much demand for my car, I'm going to buy another car. And the car by itself goes to Peugeot or goes to Volkswagen and buys another car to add to its fleet. That's DAO, meaning AI and autonomous vehicles. It could happen. So here are some examples of platform co-ops or something similar to a platform co-op. Resonate is a music platform co-op. How does it differ? It's like Spotify. It's a streaming music service. But instead of Spotify, which is a VC-backed company based in Europe, getting all the profits from this project, Resonate, founded by a guy named Peter Harris, shares the revenue with the musicians and the listeners. So it's a cooperative, but it's a technology-based. It's like cooperative 2.0. So it's cooperative in form, in the sense that all of the users of the system are actually co-owners of the system, and they also get to influence governance, decisions about the platform. But the musicians make about 2.5 times more revenue per song than they do in Spotify. Stocksy is the same kind of idea, connecting artists. So artists around the world who create photography and video can post this on this platform, Stocksy, based in Victoria, Canada, and the artists are actually co-owners of that platform as well. Peer B is based in Amsterdam. They're not a platform co-op, but they've embraced some of the ideas of platform cooperativism. Inspiral out of New Zealand embraces this idea of sort of co-creating and co-owning platforms across the community of entrepreneurs. So they basically are like an incubator for cooperative type technology-based projects. mostly New Zealand, but over time, kind of around the world. Fab Market is this cool thing for designers who use Fab Labs. They can actually create their design, test it in their own Fab Lab in their city. If it works and they want to sell it, they can post their design on a website on Fab Market, and anyone around the world can actually download the file and print it at their Fab Lab anywhere in the world. There's like 1,200 Fab Labs in the world. So I was talking about not just the platform co-op movement, but this idea of peer production and consumption. This is another example that comes out of the Fab Lab space. In fact, in Barcelona, this guy, Guillaume Tessie, is from France, moved to Barcelona, became an entrepreneur, started working in a Fab Lab in Barcelona, came up with this idea to solve an urban problem. Food. How can more people have access to local food in their own home? And he came up with this really cool idea. It's a closed-loop solution with an aquarium where fish poo that actually goes to fertilize the agriculture on top, and then the water gets filtered through the nutrients in soil and keeps going through this closed-loop thing. This can be printed out at a Fab Lab anywhere in the world as well and shared in any city or around the world. So what if you take the idea of Fab Lab and go to another level and say, okay, so we have these Fab Labs in our city, which are about actually helping people learn how to make stuff for themselves. So this is kind of like yin and yang of this AI world, right? So in the AI world, robots are going to do everything for us, but there's still this other local people space. I actually like to call this movement I'm referring to, I say it's the people, stupid. Some of you might know in the US 20 years ago, Bill Clinton used it's the economy, stupid, saying what affects political voting. I think there's something about, so I'm doing work in blockchain, and there's something about this movement and AI where people sort of think we don't need people for anything, and people are just like kind of annoying almost. But what if the 7 billion people on the world are actually important in some way, and we start thinking about how can we blend. Sophie mentioned this a little bit. This blending between technology and people I think is really interesting. I think there's lots of places, including my own job, where I could be automated out. AI could kill me. She said that the right brain stuff we are probably 10, 15, 20 years away from. I don't think so. I don't know if any of you saw this. It happened last year. There was a writing essay competition in Japan for short stories in Japan. And the voting was blind by a panel of expert literary critics. It was a short story competition, and a group of programmers in Japan programmed an AI machine to write a short story and submit it to the competition. And it got top 5. So I think AI is going to affect all kinds of industries. But there's still this thing. We still have to eat. We still need energy. We still have need for social interaction. There's things that we need that even if robots and AI can help, maybe there is an important role for humans. And this new kind of thinking around entrepreneurship in a post-capitalist society. So this idea, Thomas Diaz also, well, he's from Venezuela, but he also lives in Barcelona. A lot of my examples are Barcelona-based because I live there now. They came up with this idea of a fab city, which says, all right, what if we take the Fab Lab and go to a whole nother level? Not just about little testing and experimenting around how to develop a new product, but what if we could actually treat the city as like a Fab Lab in a way? What's the vision to be a Fab city? Kuala Lumpur is not on here. Hopefully they will be one day. A Fab city is by 2054, the year 2054, we will produce at least 50% of everything we consume within our city and our region. That's food, energy, water, products, chairs, everything. 50% of everything by 2054. All these communities, and these are not just small little towns. You've got Paris and Barcelona and Boston on this list of cities that have signed up to try to achieve this goal. If cities are going to achieve this goal, they are going to have human entrepreneurs helping achieve it. This co-creation, remember those sort of bold vision I have of towards a local but digitally interconnected global community of urban innovation, inclusive economies? I think this is part of the solution where we need to go. When I spoke to Tomas Diaz about this vision, we went deeper into what could happen and how. And this is sort of like my slide in one picture of a post-capitalist economy city in action. So you have 3D printers in your house. But as Tomas says, if you have a remote control like this in your house in the next 10, 15 years, you'll have a 3D printer in your house. And you will be able to take, like, if this back falls off of this remote, you could actually go online, download the digital design for this piece of this remote, and print it from your printer in your house. Next level, you have these fab labs in your community. You might have a fab lab in every neighborhood. And those are for prototyping, testing new ideas, and community building, and also education for students, for children, for adults who want to learn how to make stuff. But that would be prototyping. Then you have another layer at the city level, these flexible factories for Industry 4.0, where one day you will produce skateboards. Another day you'll be producing maybe shoes. I don't know. Technology. Could be all kinds of things in these flex factories with AI and robotics. And all these things are interconnected with other cities globally. So the best design for the skateboard might have come from Singapore or Malaysia or wherever. But I'm going to download it and print it either for myself or I'm going to print it for our community, for our city at the Flex Factory. All this is part of the equation. That's the top there. But then I think we're going to have platform cooperativism working in the cities. So I've talked to a lot of cities about the sharing economy. And a lot of them you all know. Uber. There's cities in the world where Uber is not legally allowed to operate. A lot of these cities are trying to look for and encourage more platform cooperative models. Instead of the VC-backed Uber model, we want more locally owned models. I'm working on a blockchain project to facilitate that cities can have local ownership over an interconnected type of platform co-op infrastructure on things that impact cities. So you'll have platform co-ops. I think you're going to have basic income. But actually, the basic income that we've been hearing about as part of the solution to AI problem, which means not everyone's going to have a job, I don't think all basic income payments are going to come from the nation state. I think a percentage of basic income will come from the city. It may or may not be conditional. So people want to believe basic income is going to be unconditional, basic income for everyone. It's possible cities will apply conditions. With our technology now, you could have a condition that you have to earn citizen points to get your basic income. So you scan your phone every time you go to volunteer to clean up your park. Every time you do something good in your society, you get points, and that contributes to your eligibility to get basic income. I believe we might see that. I also think we're already seeing it in Barcelona in a test project. Basic income payments could be part of a local cryptocurrency solution for the city. So I think we're moving. Cryptocurrency is going to be big, and I think it's not just a global borderless cryptocurrency we're going to see, but we're already seeing this, local experiments with local cryptocurrency, and that the city could provide some of their basic income with payments in local cryptocurrency. Finally, my last provocative idea, are we possibly witnessing the death of venture capital? I don't know if we have any venture capitalists in the audience, so they probably don't like me if I'm saying this, but, and I'm not the first to suggest this. I have a chapter in my book about are we witnessing the demise of venture capital. And there's three kind of overlapping explanations why I think this is happening. First, there's a growing type of entrepreneur who actually doesn't want to work with venture capitalists. They don't share the same values, and they have different time horizons. Some of you might know the project management software called Basecamp. One of the founders of Basecamp wrote a very interesting article, blog post a few years ago about his concerns with venture capital. He says, I want to put down roots, long-term bonds with coworkers and customers and the product. It's impossible to steer and guide that outcome with a venture capital time bomb ticking that can only be diffused by a 10 to 100x return within 3 to 5 years. So all of the post-capital entrepreneurship work I'm doing in the book and everything, most of those entrepreneurs are not going for venture capital. Some are. And by the way, I don't think that VCs are going to die 100%. Some are going to adapt and learn and actually participate in new forms of investing, and they already are. I'll give an example of that in a minute. This was from 2015. Forbes was already predicting that crowdfunding by itself was going to surpass venture capital as the primary source of funding for startups by 2016. Now go to another level. We've been talking about blockchain. ICOs, initial coin offerings, have already surpassed the amount of venture capital invested in startups in the last year. They already have. ICOs are crowd sales. It's like a crypto crowd sale. I think yesterday some people probably talked about ICOs. And these, for the most part, are a way to eliminate or disintermediate venture capitalists. Now, some venture capital firms are getting smart and they're investing in ICOs or participating. But the world is changing. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Boyd. We're going to open up the floor now to some questions. Earlier in the audience, I saw a lot of you guys taking some notes, paying very keen attention. So this is your chance to have a little one-on-one with Boyd and get your questions out there. The mic is just right in the center.
Yes, good morning. My name is Joseph. I wish to pose this question. You have been to Singapore a few times.
Yeah.
And Singapore doesn't seem to be in the fab list. Why is it so? Thank you.
I don't know that. In the list of cities that are becoming a fab city, that's a good question. I'm going back in April, so I'll ask them then. But, you know, Singapore, I don't know, some of you are probably from Singapore. You know, Singapore has been an amazing success story in its transformation, and it is one of the smartest cities in the world. I would agree with that. I used to rank cities in the world, and Singapore always did pretty well on using my Smart Cities wheel. But where Singapore historically was bad was in embracing this co-creation idea. There's a cultural thing there in Singapore too, like a lot of the young educated people are sort of raised in their families to think that the best thing to do when you graduate is to work in a multinational headquarter in Singapore. So this idea of taking risk and failure around entrepreneurship is not something that historically Singapore has been really strong in. Having said that, from my last visit, I was there only a few months ago, Singapore's evolving and they're becoming more entrepreneurial. And I think to embrace this idea of becoming a fab city, you have to embrace failure and risk and entrepreneurship and co-creation in a way that historically has not been part of Singapore's more, I'll say, authoritarian approach to sort of building and implementing a vision for a more smart city. So I think that's the reason why they're not yet, but they're coming up fast. So they probably will embrace it in the future.
Morning. I have one question. How do you look into information overload and the feeling of being overwhelmed in these cities?
Yeah, that's an issue with. It's a growing issue in almost any field right now. You know, Google searches are almost useless sometimes because you have 3 million results and what you get at the top search isn't always the best. We're going to have more and more data available to us with big data in cities with sensors. There needs to be a middle layer, and sometimes cities are playing a role, sometimes entrepreneurs are playing a role, and how can we aggregate this data in ways that become actually useful for citizens? It reminds me of this example. I was speaking to somebody who's a city councilor at Vienna, and they did this big open data project, and they had this hackathon for building apps around open data, and she said she was shocked by the very first app that was built. The first app that was built was a geolocated app to find the nearest public bathroom. Which seems like, we don't think about big data in bathrooms, but the city had a database of where all the public bathrooms were, but nobody knew where they were. So some innovator, entrepreneur said, you know what, there's a need for people to know where the nearest public bathroom is. I'm going to use that public data for that purpose. So we need this extra layer which actually interprets data and converts it to something that's useful to some people.
Hello, I'm Rara from IOSLIDE Indonesia. I'm representing the country as well. So I would like to ask about, you've been talking about the Fab City, right?
Yeah.
And in Indonesia now it's kind of growing about the socialpreneur. So which is, there's a lot of social business, startups, and that kind of stuff that could be possible, if it's possible that Fab City also joined Indonesia, since like it's a growing country as well, and we are one of the biggest population in the world as well. So
Yeah.
I would like to ask that. And is that possible that socialpreneur in Indonesia join the Fab City?
Definitely. I've been spending a lot of time with the people in the Fab community, the Fab City space, and there's a lot of overlap between this idea of being a social entrepreneur or a civic entrepreneur in a city and embracing this idea of a Fab City, because it goes back to this, it's a people stupid idea. The Fab City idea says we're going to actually, instead of allow the market economy to continue to focus on more and more efficiency through automation, whatever, and printing things or manufacturing things in mass in China and shipping them around the world, we're going to actually embed, embrace, and engage our local community and innovators to actually be part of the solution to meet the needs of our own communities locally. And social entrepreneurs have I've studied them a lot. There's this idea about being embedded in your territory. So it's an idea of like entrepreneurs who actually don't, they might look at the world, they might have a global worldview, but they're really interested in solving local problems that they've experienced from living or observing in their own community. And that's a very typical sort of attitude of social entrepreneurs. And this idea of a Fab City around solving local problems, producing solutions locally to solve our needs is a very synergistic thing with the social entrepreneur movement, I think.
Yeah. Hi, morning. You mentioned, I'm going to go back to I think it was your second slide, where they have 3 stages of...
the smart cities?
The smart cities,
Yeah.
correct. So currently, we're going to where the citizens themselves, we develop stuff for the city, right?
Yeah.
So step 4, would it involve like artificial intelligence actually providing solutions for the city? Would you think it would go that far?
Well, I think we're definitely going to have AI solutions in cities. I'm aware of some projects already in that space, AI in cities. Would I call it step 4? It depends on who developed it, maybe, and who owns the AI. Where I would plug that in. Like if the city takes a significant ownership role over the implementation of AI in the city, I would actually call that a Smart Cities 2.0 idea, really, because that's city leadership implementing technology to solve local problems. If AI becomes like an alien force that nobody owns, then that would be 4.0, I think.
Hi, I'm Vincent. So basically, I want to ask, since AI is like you were saying that they're going to feed us the problem, and entrepreneurs will actually go for those problems and start solving them and create a business around it. So wouldn't that actually make AI directing us instead of what conventional entrepreneurs would be like empathizing about what the market actually really needs, and this is just purely based on data? So just to clarify, you're saying, does an AI entrepreneur look at things differently than a traditional entrepreneur? Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
But Well, it depends on the entrepreneur. There's some entrepreneurs in AI I've met with that are actually really focused on this human-machine intersection possibility. For example, there's a project called Fetch, I want to say. Fetch.ai, I think they're called. They are building an AI engine. And they're going to do an ICO as well. They're building an AI engine that is focusing on mobility with the idea that you will be able to pull out your smartphone and using their technology say, I need to go from here to there. I need to go from here to the airport. Tell me the fastest way to get there using any form of transit available. I don't just mean the traditional things you would get with like a Google map. I mean like bike sharing, car sharing, public transit, taxis, the whole thing. And maybe it needs a combination. Like using an AI engine, you could actually automate in real time what would be the fastest way. Or I could actually say I want the greenest way, or I want the cheapest way. And it could use its engine and collaborate and use all of the mobility platforms that are available in a city to allow you to get from here to there faster. Great. Okay. Does that mean no humans are necessary in the solution? Definitely not, because a lot of the mobility solutions are actually provided by humans, or you're sharing a car with other humans. So this is, to me, it's that, and Sophie mentioned it, it's this, where can we blend the best parts of technology but still create a human solution that sometimes is provided by a human as well. So in some cases, AI is going to eliminate the need for humans. In other cases, it's going to be an enabler for improving our quality of life, but we'll still be humans using the service or participating.
Hi, my name is Ahmad from the London School of Economics. And basically my question is this. The future you're proposing is more of a post-capitalism, democratic socialism future, almost an anarcho-collectivism future as well. Now, my question is, with this vision of the future, this would mean probably a lack of profit motive for companies. So my question is, with companies like Google, Facebook, holding monopolies in such industries, number one, what stops Google, Facebook from disrupting small businesses? And what keeps small businesses, such as those that share profit, motivated and survive in the industries? Thank you.
Well, that's a good question and a hard one to answer. My opinion is we're going to see, it's not just mine. Paul Mason, who wrote Post-Capitalism, has said basically the same thing. We're going to see we're seeing a parallel economy emerge, and that's the one I'm talking about, this post-capitalist economy. It's already happening. I'm not making this up. All these examples of the people I talked about, the Guillaume from the aquarium project and everything, Aqua Pioneers they're called. All these projects are happening. Meanwhile, we have these monopolistic companies taking up more and more products and services and more of the economy at the same time. I think we're going to see both happening at the same time, and small entrepreneurs are not always going to win, don't get me wrong. But what's interesting with this sort of blockchain distributed technology solution, it could scale infinitely and fast, and in some cases, so the project I'm working on in blockchain is starting with a vision of providing a technology to allow any taxi driver to compete with Uber without using Uber technology, including the platform co-ops, the taxi co-op services. And when you think about that, so we know Uber has, I forget, over 100,000 drivers. I forget how many drivers they have. I don't remember the latest statistic. But Uber has had a lot of problems with their drivers who, of course, are not happy because they're basically being exploited. Everyone knows Uber's long play is to actually eliminate drivers and have all autonomous vehicles. That's everybody knows that. So drivers in the Uber model are actually just like part of a prototype service to do data gathering and as an interim step until they're allowed to roll out autonomous vehicles. Well, because the drivers in the Uber model are useless long term, they're not treated very well in most cases, and they feel exploited. So when you give drivers an option where they're no longer exploited, but they're actually like co-owners of a platform, you can really engage them fast. And when we've shared this vision with a lot of people around the world, what we're hearing is like, why would any driver work for Uber when they could co-own a platform? So what I'm trying to say is when these platforms get to enough technological scale, and if we can get a critical mass of users to embrace these alternative models, there will be some models that could just kill companies like Uber. Just kill them. Because at least until there's autonomous vehicles, and then that's another story. When there's autonomous vehicles that are ubiquitous, it might not kill Uber. But our idea is actually you could have a cooperative taxi and be a driver in a co-op taxi platform. Use our technology and say that driving cars is a transitionary technology until we actually have autonomous cars. Why can't you as a driver convert to just owning your autonomous vehicle, and therefore you're actually a co-owner of the platform, and you become an investor essentially, and now you basically have a basic income being paid for through your ownership of a vehicle you used to drive. You don't have to drive anymore, and now with that basic income you can invest in another car, or you could do another startup. You could just decide to spend time with your family. So the FANGs, some people call them FANGs, the Facebook and Amazon and Netflix and Google, those companies aren't dying anytime soon. In fact, they're consolidating power pretty powerfully around the world. But there's this other thing that's getting power, and I think it's this people power connected with technology that enables like communities around the world to actually aggregate their power in ways we couldn't before. I think we're going to see both working at the same time.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Ghazali from Malaysia. I'm interested in your conception of the modern city, because all the while cities have been part of the urbanization. And what we have seen in America, they are rebuilding their city. Malaysia is adding a new New York City. Is that what you call a smart city? First question. In 1993, your country developed a term called technopoly, which is the problem of technology suboptimizing human society. My question to you is that, how would you reach between the co-creation, co-prosperity, and co-happiness in a nation that we imagine tomorrow? Because there must be some fundamental reach between the structures of the nation today, whether in the banking, do they support this new development of how nation and society and man's role? Because fundamentally your model is coming from what my dear friend is talking is the Western capitalism model. The rise of China, India, or even Malaysia for that matter, we have our own mall. We would see a interface or a synergy of models that allow a nation develop differently, because you would have then a parallel tracks of a city not like New York or London. Is it possible? Thank you.
Yeah. So a couple questions. What makes a smart city smart is, I would almost turn the question back to you, because the first question was, is it a smart city building a new New York City or whatever? For me, there is no smart city in the world. Being a smart city is like a journey. And even if you think like Singapore, we brought up, is a good example of like what a current thinking of a best class smart city is, technology is evolving. AI, robotics, blockchain, all these things are evolving. And so even if you kind of are close to being a smart city now, then there's new things that are challenging whether or not you're still smart if you don't continue to adapt and innovate. So that's one thing. Second thing is, of course, my sort of refined vision of a smart city is no longer just about the use of technology. It's actually about improving quality of life in cities. And I didn't show it today, but actually going to your second question a bit on sort of, where cities are going to go and quality of life and all the rest of it, with a colleague of mine out of the Netherlands, we developed this new model, which I call my Smart Cities Wheel 2.0, but it's actually called the Happy Citizen Hexagon. And what we did was we merged the idea of design thinking, which a lot of you who are entrepreneurs are very familiar with design thinking. We took design thinking and applied it to the Smart Cities Wheel and came out with this thing called the Happy Citizen Hexagon, which looks at what are the things that cities will or should be focusing on to ensure citizen happiness down the road. So inclusive economy is really important in that model. So is walkability. So, you know, we think about technology like we want autonomous vehicles everywhere, but you know what we really want? Like as citizens, we want to be able to walk easily from one place to the other without using technology. I want to be able, I was looking at it last night. I got here last night at 12 o'clock at night from my plane in Spain, and I was looking around if there was some place near the hotel I could eat some good local food, but like walking within 2 blocks. I don't want to get in a taxi or an Uber or an autonomous vehicle. I just want to walk. And we actually are finding that walkability is a driving factor in what makes a city better for people. And that's not technology-driven solution. It's being smarter about how we do urban planning so that we create mixed-use housing, jobs, services, restaurants, supermarkets within close proximity of people so we don't even need any technology, autonomous or otherwise. So I think we oversell technology as the way to make cities smarter, when actually in some cases it's being smarter in how we think about how to make our cities better.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I'm Gyatul Halim from Malaysia Venture Capital Management Berhad.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, okay. You need to give me the book. I've been seconded there from Ministry of Finance for about 2 years and maybe more. Okay, two areas I'd like to raise. Just now you mentioned about whether AI or machine will replace man. Why don't those thinkers or scientists think how AI can better assist human beings rather than replace human beings? This brings me back to, I think, about 20 years back when there was this chess competition between the reigning champion then, Garry Kasparov, against Blue Sea.
Yeah.
So they said in one game, Gary lost. In the other one, he won. Although Blue Sea was able to do the computation several or even 100 steps ahead of Gary, but they said there's one factor in Gary, or human beings for that matter, that no machine could ever achieve. That was that software, SANGFROID, that is inbuilt in human beings, enabling us to think in very critical situations, the intuition. So maybe you can enlighten us. I don't think machines will ever be able to replace human beings entirely. And the second one, venture capital. Now, we never feel sad when you say that venture capital will face our doomsday one day, because when we do our fundraising, we not only put our money in the investment, but we also do hand-holding. We guide the entrepreneurs to be successful in their business. And the very difficult part is exit. I don't know whether the crowdfunders will do what we are doing now. I don't know whether they will help, they give hand-holding things to the investees. I doubt so. So maybe I can learn more from the book. Thank you.
Well, all right, he wants the book, so he can have it. I can sign it later if you want. And so, obviously, I'm not the world's expert on what AI will do and replace. Sophie's much deeper in that than I am. But I've looked at the data, and I think it's not good. If you're worried about ensuring that humans actually have normal jobs like 20, 30 years ago, I worry about that from now. I worry about that for my kids. I'm not convinced we will have traditional jobs for our kids, for my kids. But I think assuming that us not having traditional jobs means that society is going to disappear or we're going to have no use, I don't think is right. I don't know what will evolve to be using technology for and what roles we'll have in the future. But I think part of it is this idea around post-capitalism, these maker communities, inventing these ways to connect humans. Because as long as humans are on planet Earth, which if Donald Trump has his way, maybe it won't be that much longer, because he's certainly trying to provoke North Korea into a nuclear war. Who knows how long we'll be? Plus, climate change. I mean, I don't want to be a doomsday person, but I'm concerned about a lot of things in our society right now. Climate change, inequality, population, all these things combining are scary for the future, forgetting about what AI might or might not do in the future. I do believe that AI is going to replace most of what we think of our jobs today over the next 30, 40 years. But I think that something will emerge where we're doing some things of value in society, but maybe they're not traditionally paid jobs in a company. I think traditionally paid jobs in companies, full-time jobs, are kind of dying away already. The trend is people are moving to this gig economy, to these doing contract freelance work, doing lots of different things rather than one company employed job. So I think the trend is going to keep going that way, but I'm not necessarily scared that we will all of a sudden have 7.5 billion people sitting around saying, what should I do today? Because the robot's making my food, and I'm being jetted around the country and the city through these autonomous vehicles. I think we'll still have a role as humans as long as we're alive. The VC space, you'll have to read the book and come back to me now that I gave it to you. Now you can tell me what you think about the future of venture capital. And maybe if you decide to change your career now afterwards and decide to work at a fab lab, I don't know.
Hi. I was going to ask for the book. My name is Wanzalea Ravi, and I'm from the makerspace. And there was a lot of talk about Fab City, and earlier, I'd like to inform the audience that Fab Cities or makerspaces are pretty much the same thing, which is a place where you have tools that you can, it's democratizing production and innovation. You and me, we can walk in there and say we want to make ABC, and the community will help you. So what I'd like to say is it's not a Fab City in the Fab Lab linked network, but you do have a Fab Lab in Kuala Lumpur. Even Magic has one. I believe it's still there. Also in Publica, there's a few Fab places. Fab Labs are digital fabrication labs. So I'd like to say that if you said that in Barcelona it's worked, my question is that, has it worked? I think it's been going on for about 10 years. Mm-hmm. So would that be something that Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, or other cities in Malaysia should follow, enabling and providing tools of production to the citizens? So we don't have to wait for Fab Labs. It's already in KL.
Thanks for that. I didn't know, so I'm glad to hear. There's already progress happening here. Absolutely. I don't believe any solution you find in one city is copy-paste to another city, but there's a lot you can learn from what's happening in other cities, and Barcelona is one of the pioneering cities in becoming a true maker city, and that's a combination of having several Fab Labs. We don't just have one, we have 3 or 4 Fab Labs in Barcelona, official Fab Labs. In fact, the one that built that Aqua Pioneer solution is a green Fab Lab, just focused on helping people make green things, green, sustainable solutions. We also have in Barcelona a network of these things called Ateneos, which is, there's 2 operating, 3 about to operate, and a couple more new ones, which are neighborhood-based maker spaces for targeted areas. So they have, in one neighborhood, they have an artistic-driven maker community space. In another area, they have another renewable energy maker space. In another one, they have a maker space. We had somebody ask about social entrepreneurs. We have a maker space in this Ateneas network just for social entrepreneurs. So what I'm trying to say is, I think the one thing at the city level we could certainly do more of is encourage more distributed maker type spaces and then have them be interconnected globally, as I talked about, because of all this knowledge sharing that can happen, or the best design that comes from a maker space in Kuala Lumpur, and we could take it and build on it, and we can interact with each other. So I think it's this local but connected globally part is really important, and sounds like you're on the right track already. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.